Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 27th meeting of the Burbank Infrastructure Oversight Board, our first meeting of 2022. Happy New Year, everyone. Good to see you. All right, let's start off the meeting with our flag salute, so please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, Karina, could we get the roll call, please?
Absolutely. Armin Avazian? I believe you're muted, Armin.
Yeah, I can't hear you, Karina. I'm sorry.
Maybe can I?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Armin Avazian?
Present.
Walter Brennan Jr.?
Present.
Maria Coronado?
Here.
Greg Jackson?
Here.
Vanessa Rochelle? I just spoke with her. She's going to be a little late to the meeting, but she'll be here. Tamala Takahashi?
Here.
Thank you. And Jeff Vanderboort?
Here.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, do we have any announcements from staff tonight?
I do, Chair Takahashi, if I may go ahead.
Yes, please do.
Good evening, everybody. Happy New Year. I just wanted to start out by saying, thank you again for being so flexible through this whole COVID process. I know none of us signed up for virtual meetings when we joined this board. And so I just wanted to, as a friendly reminder, we're reminding all of our boards and commissions, please be aware that, in the spirit of transparency, these are open and public meetings, even though we are still taking them remotely. And so please try to avoid, ex parte communications that may go on in a chat function if there's, if chat is enabled in Zoom. Luckily, our recording secretary has done an excellent job of making sure that feature is not available in our meetings, but the same could be said for, ex parte communications via cell phone. Essentially, all of your communications during our meeting need to be on the record. And so I just wanted to, remind everybody quickly about that point. And along those lines, just another quick reminder, please try to keep your video on while we are present in the meeting, because when it goes off, it's hard to tell if people are still in the room, if they're still listening. And so just to make sure that we know who is in attendance, it's helpful to just keep the video on during our meetings. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you for the reminder. With using this new format, we're still establishing standards and understanding how to use it better. Yeah, thank you. Any other announcements from staff?
Yes. Madam Chair, I have 3 for the board. First, I want to thank everyone for complying with the city's vaccination exemption policy. It's appreciated. Secondly, I have drafted the Measure P funding memo and have submitted that through the city manager's office. It is under review with the city manager's office. And once that's finalized, I will be able to share that with you, email it through Karina so you can take a look at it. And that'll go to council, and I'll be able to keep you apprised of the process as it goes through our annual budget process going through May. Third, just quickly, we in Public Works and the Community Development Department have seen concerns on the new Burbank Bridge, the overpass and striping and bike lanes, and we're working on that. It's Caltrans project, it's Caltrans work, and it's being looked at in real time, and we will have a plan with them going forward, along with the other what's called punch work. When projects are done, there are certain things to continue on and finalize. So I will keep the board and the public apprised of that, and feel free to reach out to me individually. I can get in touch with the right project manager and community development to get specific answers that anyone on the board or in the public may have. So those are my 3. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you for the updates. Appreciate the update about the bridge, particularly for the safety of our drivers and our bikers and pedestrians over that bridge. Much appreciated.
Sure.
I have, I'm sorry, what, any other announcements?
None from staff.
Okay. Did I hear someone else speak up, wanted to say something? No? Okay. I have one quick announcement. The email just came through today as a reminder from the city that on Monday, January 31st, City Council is going to have a goal setting meeting for the year. Every January, the City Council has a goal setting meeting. That's going to be 2 p.m. Virtually. And that's always educational and it's an opportunity to call in if you have any concerns or interests in sharing your ideas to the council about where our city's goals should be for the year. So it's at 2 p.m. Great. Thank you. All right. If there are no other announcements, then do we have any public comments tonight?
We have no one at this time.
Okay. Thank you. Then we will move on to the consent calendar. The only item we have on the consent calendar is the approval of minutes. Is there any discussion or commentary about the minutes before we go on to the roll call? Okay. Do we get do we do straight to the roll call or do we get a motion? Motion. Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve minutes.
Okay, Mr. Brennan.
Second.
And Ms. Coronado second. All right, now let's do the roll call.
Okay, Armin Avazian,
Yes.
Walter Brennan Jr.,
Approve.
Maria Coronado,
Yes.
Greg Jackson,
Yes.
Vanessa Rochelle, she's currently absent at the moment, Tamala Takahashi,
Yes.
perfect, and Jeff Vanderboort.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving right along here. Let's move on to the first item on our agenda, first presentation, fiscal year 22-23 capital project budget schedule and process. Is that going to be Mr. Berkman? Mr. Hahn?
Yes. I will start off, Madam Chair. Board members, we are pleased to kick off this process with you yet again. Our first ever prioritized capital improvement program for this fiscal year was completed successfully together last year. We really appreciate all the effort that everybody put in there. And we're looking to take lessons learned and make this an even smoother and better and more efficient and, as I say, aggressive and achievable capital program coming up. And with that, I'd like to pass it off to Mr. Hahn to provide an overview of what we're going to do going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Berkman. Chair Takahashi and members of the board. I have a few slides that I'd like to share with the group. But before that, so staff has been working on creating the CIP budget list for probably over about 6 weeks now. We're in the final stages of cleaning it up, and we will, after the list is created, Mr. Berkman and myself will actually score it and rate it. And that's the final version will be shared with the group to the board. And I wanted to share the calendar as far as the overall schedule when we will be presenting it to the IOB. On February 24th, next February meeting, we will do our first presentation, and we'll hopefully the list is nice and clean, and the list that whatever questions that you have, then we'll actually compile that and bring it back in March, and hopefully by the end of that meeting, the board will be satisfied and we'll be able to recommend it to be presented to council. If the board is not pleased, then you have more questions and we need to go back and answer, then we'll have a special meeting if needed in April 7th. So after the board has actually approved the list, then the first council presentation of the CIP budget is on April 26th. And then on May 3rd, there's a budget continuation as needed. So on April 26th, if everything is actually completed and presented and council's okay with it, then they will, we don't have to come back on May 3rd, but I believe usually it takes 2 council meetings to make the presentation for the entire city budget. And on May 24th, the public hearing and adoption of the 22-23 annual budget will be presented to council, and that's the final stage of it. Based on the comments received last year, we actually we made some revisions to the form itself. The form on the left is the fiscal year 21-22 CIP request form that we used last year. Some of the feedback that we received is that you want to see the funding source. Where's the money coming from? So we added this information here. And also the project budget is broken down to design, construction, so that's what we call soft costs, the management and inspection, and any other contingencies and other project-related costs that we need to add, such as permit fees and different things that we need to consider. And also the project form, the city at this time, we're just trying to refine it internally as far as the process too. So the process that we have, we actually had some old forms, and we're trying to kind of marry the two. And I think we still have two forms floating around. And I think the goal next year is to just have one form throughout the process. So this probably next year, it may get refined just a little bit more. And then the prioritization scoring criteria, we did make one adjustment, the community interest. Based on kind of the discussions and the questions that came up, we really simplified the how we approach the community interest. Points are awarded based upon stakeholders' interests, where the other project categories do not apply. So this is the opportunity when we actually present the project to the board, and if the board sees a project that you believe that needs to move up, then you could actually request that, the community interest, the board has an interest in this particular project, and you see if Mr. Bergman and myself, we actually rated it at maybe 4, and the board feels that it should be at 7, then we can have a discussion about that and adjust it accordingly. So that's as far as the community interest, it kind of, there's, I guess, some of a pecking order in the sense that there's a council, planning commission, IOB board members, city managers, and different stakeholders that has an interest, and also obviously the community. And so this is how Mr. Bergman and I will be evaluating the project, the final list. And I think one of the questions also that was brought forth last year was, are we presenting all the projects that were actually requested? Last year, fortunately, the number of projects and the funds available, it actually matched up. So we didn't have to cut there wasn't any projects below the line. This year, based on the projects that's being requested, there may be some projects that may be below the line. And what we're also, from the standpoint, from management's standpoint, we're looking at project, what we could deliver as far as staff capability and the manpower that we have to be able to deliver the project. So those are some of the things that we're looking at also, because we have a lot of carryover projects, multi-year projects, I should say, that are we're in the process. And then we have new projects that we want to add. So we're trying to balance that out. But regardless, we will be rating all the projects, and we will be presenting it to the board, and so that you have a say in the entire process for transparency. And that completes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm definitely available. Thank you.
So Hoon, if I may add, there really has been a ton of work going on that Hoon has been spearheading, and it's multiple departments. There's a lot of work within Public Works to develop all the projects and prioritize them internally, make sure we're putting forward the ones that are critical and that we know we can deliver. And you will be seeing, remember the prioritization forms are the projects that are new and need to be scored and reviewed by the board to say yes or no. We like this to be put into the capital budget for the next fiscal year coming up. The ones that are in process, they're not scored because, as you know, when a project gets in the system and it's to be done. We don't want to stop it. It's to be done, scope, budget, schedule in accordance with our sheet and completed. And then the funding returned to any additional funding that's left over once the project is completed goes back into the parent account, basically the fund source. And then it comes back into our purview to see how we want to use it going forward in the following years with this process. Anything else, Hoon?
No, I think you hit it on the nail.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, board members, we're here for any questions if you have any.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. Do my fellow board members have any questions or comments they'd like to share? Yes, Mr. Jackson.
Yeah, I just have a question with regards to funding sources. Has there been any word from Washington when the trucks of money are going to be coming our way for the infrastructure rebuild? And if it comes, mid-year, will you be able to adjust and take advantage of those proceeds?
Yes, Board Member Jackson, we have plenty of correspondence going in with our representatives that connect us with the state and federal agencies. We, at staff level, receive emails about pending notices of future monies available for grants, but the actual funds are not ready to be distributed yet. So we're waiting on those, and certainly we'll keep the board apprised of the funding sources and when they're available to us. Staff, we're definitely looking at the projects that we want to load up with the funds and get our projects going. Anything from major things like the Olive Avenue Bridge, potentially, working with Metro on a major project with the BRT, something we're thinking about, and that could be a good project if the federal monies go and that project goes in whatever shape it will be. And other things in the background, from complete streets to a variety. So we're all building up our docket to say, all right, we're gonna have to move quick. We know that, and we want to get these funds to these projects. So we're definitely continuing the process to be ready.
Okay, well, that's very good to hear. Sometimes, things come and they surprise the local jurisdictions, and to be proactive rather than reactive is obviously to our benefit. Thank you again.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Good question, Mr. Jackson. Anyone else? Any other board members? Yes, Mr. Vanderpoort. Oh, you're on mute.
Forgive me. Thank you again, Madam Chair, and thank you to staff for the presentation. This is a housekeeping matter. I know I emailed staff and Mr. Bergman responded asking if there was anything that we could receive to prepare for this brief presentation. And I was told that there was nothing. And the thing that always matters to me, unfortunately, as I'm old, I'm trying to look into my little screen here, and there's an insert of our faces that covers, for example, those forms where Mr. Han was explaining what has changed and hadn't changed. I couldn't read what had changed. None of this is earth-shattering, but I would beg you to please give us a little more rather than a little less. If nothing else, I'm thinking, although we don't have any fans, no one comes up to speak at our board meetings, but I can't imagine how anyone could speak about something for which they have nothing to even read other than a title. So on that little minor housekeeping item, please consider the fact that reading something on the screen at the same time that we have our faces covering some of it is difficult to accomplish on my end. I have a quick question, though, more specifically with respect to that prioritization scoring. Mr. Han explained how this last line item had to do with these 10 points of community interests, and more specifically, an opportunity for the board to influence the outcome. Now that I have it a little bigger in front of me, the total points I think that are achievable are about 60 points or so, 70 points for this. How many?
50.
50. So out of 50 points, the board can influence 10 out of those 50 points. Just curious. I was trying to understand that to see how we weigh into this issue of prioritization if we have such a small amount of influence. Because at the end of the day, and rightfully so, I understand that the issues of safety and the condition of the system, all of that matters tremendously. But I suspect that that's true for almost every project. So to the extent that as a board, we have any opportunity to influence or recommend to council where these tax dollars that people are contributing should be spent on, it seems to me that that's important. And I just throw that out for my colleagues and for staff to think about this a little more. Mr. Bergman indicated that this was the opportunity for the board to influence the decision, but I wondered if we're truly looking at numbers, if at the end of the day we have a project that was weighing it at 47 points because of staff came to that conclusion, and staff concludes that another project only weighs in at 36 points. Even if we jump in and give it a full 10 points, we still won't catch up with the one ahead. It's just a thought. That's all. Just having seen this for the opportunity of a discussion now, I just wanted to throw that in and make sure that both I'm sharing my feelings with my fellow board members, and then staff finds a way to give us the opportunity to be vocal about our higher priority community interest projects.
Ahun, may I?
Yes.
Through the chair, board member Vanderboord, it's a great point and we appreciate it. First off, yes, absolutely we should and will provide the attachments in the future. It was a thought of, it's an introduction and we can go through it, and more importantly, the discussion can happen like this, but very much noted, we will send out the attachments. Our apologies. For the scoring, to refresh our memories, we did have this conversation last year, and I appreciate you bringing it up again. This open, transparent scoring process that we came up with, it provides the baseline for all the projects that are being presented from staff that we receive at Public Works from all the departments, and of course internally within Public Works. And it sets a starting point. It's a logical place where everybody could see the categories. And what you will find, as Hoon mentioned, last year, we didn't have any projects below the line, meaning projects that were not carried through because they had a low score. We didn't have the funding or staff resources to get them in the program. Probably this year we will. This, going through the details of the scoring will be helpful for the projects that individuals feel maybe should be above the line. And that's where we could talk about the categories themselves, and certainly community interest is one of those categories. And to sum up, the basic scoring for community interest is when it is a council priority and it's in a goal setting session. It's in the council goals. That's likely a 10. If a CCB is looking, community commission board is looking at it, you're looking at somewhere around a 7. If there's plenty of community interest, but nothing outside of that, it could be 5, 6, somewhere in there. So it is definitely a starting point, but there are definite guidelines within that community interest. And you're right, there could be a lack of opportunity because of all the other categories that staff sees and scores that community interest won't weigh in to push something above the line or above another project. But it is definitely a good starting point and it's a useful tool. And I think if we get the chance, we'll see that happen this year with some projects that we might want to debate.
Thank you.
Do you have anything?
No.
I want to thank you very much, Mr. Bergman. Mr. Hahn, thank you very much. No apologies needed on the paperwork. And by the way, I'm like a child here. I just discovered that I can move our faces across the screen. And got to read something I wanted to read right now because the screen has a capricious mind of its own. It puts us on the right or the left, at least in my computer. But thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. I look forward to continuing this work in the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderbork. Good questions. Anyone else have any thoughts or questions to share? Great. Okay. Before I ask my questions, I just want to welcome Ms. Rochelle. Welcome to the meeting. Good to see you. Okay. First, I wanted to thank Mr. Hahn and good to see you. I want to thank Mr. Hahn and Mr. Berkman too for all the work that you put into this process, the presentation of the schedule, and updating the scoring sheet. And I appreciate how you listened to the board and to the concerns, and you addressed all those and implemented them in the new scoring sheet. So thank you for doing that. And for my particular interest, I want to thank you for adding at the bottom, I don't know if others noticed, but you added the future costs of the project in the form, and I appreciate that addition. It's not in the scoring I see, but it is noted there. So it's definitely on the form, and I appreciate that. I have two questions I think probably would be pretty quick to answer, but when the scoring of the different projects are going to be presented to us, how is that presentation going to be done? Is it going to be an aggregate, or is it going to be an individual sheets that we'll look at, or maybe both?
It would be both. So we're going to have a master list of all the projects, and then also you have the individual projects with the score that's actually broken out by the 5 different categories.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then my second question is, there's space on the form for both forms for the narrative about the scoring to make sure that the justification and discussing that. Can you speak a little bit to that narrative and what you are thinking? Thank you. Yes, for bringing it up. Speak a little bit to the narrative and what you are intending or hoping to put in that narrative for our information. Will you be talking about just significant scoring, like things that you may be scored and you're not sure why, or are you going to have a complete narrative, or just to discuss a little bit your thoughts on that?
Sorry, when you're saying which section are you talking about?
Yeah, can you bring it up just so it's a little bit bigger? I'm having a hard time seeing.
Yeah.
Thank you. A small print.
Yeah.
So the view slideshow.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah. Easier to see. Great. Okay. So it says project description and project justification. If I recall correctly, right. So on the left, the old form, you had a long area for justification, and this new form, it's a smaller area, but I'm going to guess that it has the same purpose. If I recall correctly, in the previous year, the justification had a narrative as to basically why it received the scores that it did, and it helped understand how you got there. So just if you could speak a little bit to both why the section's smaller, but just thinking about like what kind of narrative are you expecting us to see on the justifications for that?
Well, the justification is actually the justification for the project, not necessarily the scoring. And so, yeah, the project description. What is the project? So for instance, the overlay project. So you're going to have a description of the overlay project for the arterial, let's say, and then the justification is explaining the overall payment program, that this is part of that program and this is the phase of that particular program. So as far as the scoring, we're not going to have a detailed description of how we're scoring the projects the way we're scored. So we could definitely have an open discussion during the IOB meetings. And then if you have any comments that you wanted to add, then we could definitely add the comments to the forms that will get presented as part of the budget package.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
And Madam Chair?
Yes.
For the board, we would include, like we did last year, a discussion or a sentence or two about the community interest, so people know the basis for that score if it's applicable.
Perfect. Thank you. Great. Okay, that's all. Those are all the questions I had. Any final thoughts from the board members? No. Okay, then we are going to close out this topic. Thank you for the presentation and for the update to the form. Looking forward to that discussion when it comes in front of us. All right, moving on to item number 2, discussion and establishment of infrastructure oversight board length of meeting. Is that Mr. Berkman for this item?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, Madam
You have the
Chair,
floor.
board members. I had an interesting view of the initial August 22nd meeting in 2019 that set the table for the board to move forward. And it was nice to see you all in the chamber. I to get back in there for my first time with you. But be that as it may, over the past couple of meetings, we have had discussions about the length of the meeting and have had to check in at the 90-minute mark to make sure everybody was able to continue the meeting and that we wanted to continue the meeting, that the board did. And I wanted to provide the memo. Hopefully you had the chance to take a peek at it. It was at that first meeting that this 90-minute time was established by the board. And subsequently, last meeting, we wanted to revisit this. So it's on our agenda now for discussion. And that is our recommendation, to open it up to the board discussion and take action as you would see fit with staff. So, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Before we open discussion, I just want to thank you for revisiting that first meeting. That was pre-COVID. I imagine all of us had less white hair and probably fewer wrinkles. So thank you for going back and revisiting that and then reminding us what that discussion was at that meeting. Given the memo that we received, do any of the board members have thoughts or comments on this topic? Mr. Jackson.
Yeah, I think I'm probably the culprit for saying 90 minutes at that August meeting. I mean, I think we could probably pretty much exhaust all of our topics on a good day in 90 minutes, and brevity has a lot of virtue. But I was troubled the last 2 meetings when it seemed that we were, if not bending the rules, imposing on staff by having our meeting extend beyond that 90-minute deadline, which I've been on 5 different boards over the course of the last 30 years. And this is the only board that seems to have a hard, fast time limit. I think we need to have the option to be able to fully explore the issues that, are before us. But I don't want to take advantage of staff and extend meetings unnecessarily. At the beginning, I believe there was some discussion of having our meetings start at 5. That's fine with me, and that's fine with probably several of my fellow retirees. But for those who are out there in the workforce, that's not that convenient. I'm wondering, I'll just throw it out, if we have a long agenda, would it be possible for the rest of the members to join us a half hour earlier at 5:30 to have that flexibility so that we're not here late? I just think we should be able to have the ability to go on beyond pointing that 90-minute time limit. And, as Mark Twain said at the end of his lectures, ladies and gentlemen, my feet are tired and you are tired. And leaving it to people to realize that things should come to a close. Anyway, thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Jackson. Yes, Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to agree with Mr. Jackson the same way. Being retired, we can either start earlier, and if it's important that we discuss whatever the subject is to finalize a decision, yeah, I have no problem with extending the meeting beyond 90 minutes. But then again, just like Mr. Jackson said, what about staff? They might be tired listening to us. So I just, as long as we're reasonable about it, I have no problem either starting early or extending it on, depending on the subjects that we have to discuss, depending on how important they are. 90 minutes doesn't have to be a limit. We need to do that. So it's up to the board or for the staff to let us know like what is not possible. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Brennan. Other thoughts? Yes, Ms. Coronado.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to say to the retirees, as a member of the workforce out there, I wouldn't be opposed to starting the meeting at 5 p.m. And as far as taking whatever time we need to finish up the topics that we have at hand, I'm happy to stay as long as we need to. I know we're doing great work here. So I know we don't want to put undue stress on staff, but I would like to make a motion that we start the meeting earlier and to let everyone else determine what time that is. I guess that's not a real motion, but let's hear from everybody and see. That's all I have.
Yeah. I recall, Ms. Rochelle, I recall there being a challenge for you because you work downtown, right?
Actually, I work in Alhambra, so our headquarters, we're in Alhambra. So tonight was a challenge for me just to get logged on at 6, so I was a little bit stressed. So I am a member of the workforce and I work a 440, so I'd be willing to, if we want to change it to 5:30, okay, I could work with it. But let's hear what staff, they also work for Public Works. I know it's challenging for me just to log on at 6 o'clock. So I'm in my building and then I'm also working from home too. So I can hear from everybody though.
So there's a clear concern for staff. Let's hear from staff about, do you have a challenge meeting earlier, or is there a challenge by going too late? Or I know that this is, yeah, okay.
Madam Chair, board members, thank you for the conversation. The 90-minute mark was basically, as the new guy, I was instructed that's the way the board was set up. I thought at the time, just hearing it at face value was a good idea. In my 15 years of working with commissions and committees and boards, 2 hours always seemed to be a reasonable time, and for a couple of reasons. One, if you're going to have valuable, productive discussions, 2 hours is a long time and a proper time, like to focus. So I thought maybe that's where you were coming from. There is the element of agenda control and the amount of staff workload that we have each and every day. So while that wasn't in the board's consideration when we started back in August of 2019, it's certainly something that I want to keep in mind for myself and my team. But that being said, it's really in consideration of the board's time. We are at your service. And if there's a topic of importance, we would put it on the agenda and we would stay with you till midnight if that's what it called for. But the basic, with the bylaws and the way things were set up, it was agreed to have that 90-minute mark, at least to check in. So it's up to the board to see if you would like that. And in consideration of your fellow members, the time we're available 5 o'clock or after, that's fine with staff. You guys can set that with us. And just be cognizant of really each other's time, the workforce and the work that everybody else has to do, and the outside nighttime, commitments, family or otherwise. That's something that all committees and commissions and boards have to think about as well. So I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts with you.
Thank you, Mr. Berkman.
Ms. Korahara, did you have anything?
Yes, I do actually, Madam Chair and board members. As one of the, I suppose, only staff members who was present during that 2019 meeting, I went back and refreshed my memory as well. And so, part of this could just simply be a clarification in the verbiage that we use for our motion, because I think there was some discussion about the 90 minutes being a goal as opposed to a hard deadline. And so if you'd like to set up the rule so that there's a check-in at 90 minutes or 2 hours, just to make sure that all of your colleagues are able to stay on late. I think there was some discussion about those who go to work early in the morning, having to wake up early in the morning, so if any of the board members themselves have a hard stop at 90 minutes or 2 hours, whatever you decide this evening, we can serve as that timekeeper just to check in and make sure that we are respecting everybody's time. But as Mr. Berkman mentioned, staff is here. We are available to continue the meeting to complete business as necessary. I don't think the intent was ever to shut down completely at 90 minutes. So it may just be a matter of clarifying that language in the motion.
Wonderful. Thank you. Other thoughts?
No, I think, Madam Chair, I think that's a good idea. I mean, I don't want to impose on our colleagues who are in the workforce. I want them out there, working and paying to Social Security. But I think if sometimes if we have a long agenda, we can move forward to 5:30. I think that might benefit everybody.
Madam Chair, I do have a question for Ms. Kuwahara. To move, we have to be consistent with our meeting time start. So for the board's consideration, does that have to go through an ordinance or any change to the bylaws, or we just can do it?
We can change the bylaws to the meeting time start, but we would need to, if we're doing it that way where we have a long agenda and we want to try to start earlier, we would need to agendize it properly. So it would need to be, we need to check in with the members and make sure everybody's available. And I think there's also, IT issues, just making sure that our infrastructure can start at 5:30 and not overlap with other meetings that may be going on. So I would advise if we do something like that, that it be the exception rather than the rule, where if we really do anticipate a 3-hour meeting, then we can consider starting earlier. But otherwise, it sounds like people are generally good with a check-in at some point in time. Maybe we can lengthen that check-in point. But yeah, I agree that there needs to be some measure of consistency so that we get the information out to the public and they know when to log in early if necessary.
So to follow that up for the board members, if a motion comes into play to say, let's move this to 5:30, we would want to, at staff level, follow up that with the next meeting. We'd have to confirm that is available with our other resources that do this video meeting and eventually, the chamber meeting. Would that be an accurate way to think about going forward? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Not all my ideas may be good ideas. So I threw it out as something that might be doable, but I'll leave it to staff and our esteemed city attorney to, if they think the language could or should be changed.
So we discussed possibly the beginning time of the meeting, but I'm wondering from our board, does anyone have a challenge with the meeting going late? So it's been made clear that the staff is okay if it needs to happen, that they're available to go late. But board members, is anyone have a challenge with if a meeting goes late because our discussion goes long, that half hour would be necessary to keep it from going too late? We're not going to normally go that late, but in a discussion where it might go for a few hours, I'm particularly thinking like the meeting where we're going to be looking at the different projects and it may just be that one meeting goes late and that's just an exception. We'll just go late that day, but normally we don't. But does anyone have a hard stop at a time that it can't go past 9 or something like that we need to consider? Okay. I think for consistency's sake, I think it might be worthwhile to consider keeping it at the time it is, just to keep things consistent. In consideration of the 90 minutes, personally, I like the idea of having a check-in, especially when we get into the discussion and I lose track of time, and just considering that, just to look at, rather than saying, let's stop right now and decide whether we're going to continue the meeting, but just more of like, just a reminder, it's 90 minutes. Just keep it in mind. The question I think really is 90 minutes too short? Should we go to 2 hours for the reminder? But from what Ms. Kurohara said is that if we have a reminder and we're changing the language, it actually is more of just a check-in rather than a limitation. So in that respect, it may not really affect much we won't really put a limit on us on how long we can run the meeting, right? If I understand it correctly. Okay.
Correct. It would not put a limit on you. And frankly, I don't even read the rule right now as putting a limit on you. So yes, it's simply a check-in.
Yeah, that's the sense I got too, that we haven't had a limit so far per se, but just more of a check-in. Yeah, okay. One of the things I am considering though, and please board members share with your thoughts if you have any additional thoughts on this, is that I like the idea of having an intention on the agenda for 90 minutes of discussion. So when we're thinking of the agenda items and adding them to the agenda for future, to say, okay, this is what we think will take about 90 minutes to discuss. So we don't put too much on the agenda. We don't try to pack too much in. And again, as what Mr. Berkman said earlier about staff preparation, if we aim at that 90-minute discussion, odds are we aren't going to be overburdening the staff with too much prep as well. So to that end, I like the idea of having the goal of 90 minutes. And I think it was our original intention back in 2019 was to have the goal of 90 minutes and keep that in mind for the future rather than extending it to 2 hours. So that's just my thoughts though on that. Does anyone have any other thoughts or additional viewpoints? Mr. Vanderborp.
Madam Chair, just very quickly to express my reason for wanting to have had a 90-minute time frame. When we first started as a board, we're a board of 7 individuals, and it felt like without having some effort to limit the amount of time, our time could devolve into an endless discussion. But that hasn't been the case. We've had maybe 20 to 30 meetings already. And I think this board has worked very efficiently. So I, for one, would be happy to make a motion that our meetings continue to start at 6 p.m. on the 4th Thursday of the month, unless subject to change due to holidays or special meetings, as staff has already suggested there might be one coming up in April, and that our time frame be announced at 90 minutes so that the board can feel comfortable to know that we've passed that. And I think rather than making it so that it is a motion and it requires approval, we're not a contentious board. We're not going to be arguing, but I can just easily see how you can imagine listen to Congress and the Senate and all these rules. You can just get into nonsense of 90 minutes, I'm not moving forward. A couple of people become angry and suddenly we have no more meeting. I think everybody here has expressed the same desire, which is how do we work most efficiently with staff and how do we stay on course? So I'm happy to keep the 6 o'clock. If for no other reason for continuity, and Ms. Rochelle is nice enough to accommodate us, and I do remember that it was very specific at the time that she had limited access to time because she had to show up at the live. Now at least with the Zooming is a little slightly better. But having said that, I'm happy to make a motion that the 90 minutes becomes an attention brought to the board for purposes of reminding ourselves of the time, and that we do not limit ourselves to a specific amount of time. And staff feels comfortable that if we end up discussing something for 120 or 150 minutes, so be it, because we find it necessary.
So was that motion clear to everybody?
Well, let me summarize.
Okay.
So the motion is to confirm that the board will meet on the 4th Thursday of every month at 6 p.m. and that board meetings will be subject to no restrictions of length of time, but the board will be advised by staff when 90 minutes has been reached, and perhaps just in an abundance of caution when 150 minutes have been reached. So we will have two by then we'll Mr. Jackson says more than our feet will be tired, our behinds will be tired, and we'll be ready to stop. But maybe I recently watched the school board meetings, and there's a voice that comes up every hour or so, whatever it is, and reminds people that the time has passed, whatever it is. But that isn't really for us. I think it's more we're working very well, and I think that staff should feel comfortable. If something takes longer than 90 minutes, we all will work as long as it takes. And likewise, we don't want to waste anybody else's time.
Okay, great.
If I may, Madam Chair, just as a point of clarification, Chair or Board Member Vanderbork, so staff will check under your motion. Staff will provide a verbal reminder when we reach those time limits. And then if any of the board members have a problem with staying later, at that point, the board can make a motion to continue the meeting to the next month. Otherwise, we don't need a motion to continue the meeting that evening. Correct?
Thank you so much for making that even better. And so, yes, that would be what I would like to suggest for all of us, if that's okay with my colleagues, and if there's a second to the motion.
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Okay. So shall we take a roll call then?
Armin Avazian?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Walter Brennan Jr.?
Agreed.
Maria Coronado?
Yes.
Greg Jackson?
Yes.
Vanessa Rochelle?
Yes.
Tamala Takahashi?
Yes.
And Jeff Vanderbork.
Yes.
Great. Thank you for the discussion, everyone. Appreciate it. And thank you to staff for bringing this up onto our agenda for discussion. Moving on to introduction of additional agenda items. We have our pending agenda items already on our agenda for February and March. Do any board members have requests for additional agenda items that are not listed here? If nobody has one, I think that might be a first.
Know what's coming.
Right? we have a packed meetings in February. So yeah. Okay.
Madam Chair, I do have one additional agenda item.
Oh, okay.
So we are looking in March to bring to the board a revised speed hump policy. And our traffic engineering manager, Ed Yu, has been here over 6 months now, probably 8, coming out of our pandemic. We have been working on that, and we're ready to have a draft to you for your review and discussion. So we look forward to bringing that to you.
Great, thank you. Well, as a point of clarification, will the Transportation Committee be involved in that as well? Will they get a separate presentation, or how will?
No, that is specifically for the IOB.
Great. Okay, thank you for clarification. And that's for March, you said, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other additional agenda item requests? Oh, Mr. Avazian, yes.
Agenda request, but just a question. When we'll get an update on Measure P revenue?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question, please? You cut out there.
Measure P revenues update, when we're going to get any information?
I think we talked about that last meeting. Didn't we have finance a couple of meetings ago? Finance director.
But are we going to get any mid-year updates before the budget time?
No, we weren't planning on that. I believe that is within the capital improvement budget process, where finance takes a look at the Measure P revenues available, and it's presented within our capital program presentation.
Thank you.
So for point of clarification, the presentation we got on the Measure P last meeting ago is the information that will be used in the budget moving forward for the capital improvement program.
And it would be updated based on the latest revenue numbers that finance department has. So without getting into discussion, I could leave it with the finance department head that analyzed it, and they say, here's your money available for Measure P in the capital program, and we use that to bring the program to you.
Okay, thank you. Good question, Mr. Avazian. Thank you. All right. One last chance. Okay, great. If there's no other additional agenda items, just a reminder for our February, March meeting coming up. That's on the pending agenda items. And our next meeting is on February 24th at 6 p.m. I'm going to guess still on Zoom. So please have a wonderful rest of your January. Again, Happy New Year to everyone. And with that, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you much all for being here. Good night, everyone.
Run.
Bye.